Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. My name is Kayla, I am 29, and my mom went for my throat. I had one hand on my suitcase zipper when my phone started vibrating. I ignored it twice, I should not have. On the third buzz I answered and everything snapped tight. "Are you really leaving him behind?" Her voice hit like a slap. I stood there with the zipper halfway closed. My pulse jumped and I hated that she could do that. I asked who told her anything and she didn't answer. She barreled forward anyway, like she had a script. "Ethan is your stepson, not a spare kid." I pressed my free hand against the suitcase lid. It was a stupid move, like I could hold my life shut. "I'm going with my family," I said, my mouth felt dry. "And he's not family," she laughed sharp and ugly. I kept my tone even because I was already slipping. I said, "Not on this trip," and her breath turned cold. "You don't get to pick and choose," she shot back. I stared at my wall like it could coach me. I wanted to end the call, I also wanted her to understand. Those wants fought each other and I just stood there. I told her Mark would stay home with Ethan. I said it fast, like speed made it kinder. There was a pause, then a low little sound from her. Not sympathy, more like satisfaction. "So you planned it," she said, and I felt my face heat. I snapped, "Plan what, a vacation?" She cut in quick, "Plan to ditch him." That word made my stomach twist because it worked. I should explain what I meant, but I didn't. Instead I went defensive because that's my reflex. "I'm not ditching anyone," I said too loud. I heard myself and cringed because it sounded guilty. Her next line landed worse somehow. "You're acting like he's a problem you can ship away." I gripped the suitcase handle until my fingers ached. I wanted to ask why she cared so much and I stopped myself. She kept going and she did not slow down. "Do you know what he told me last weekend?" My throat tightened hard, my mind started racing. I asked, "Why was he with you last weekend?" Silence, then a small sniff like she had been waiting. "Don't change the subject," she snapped. I swallowed and it hurt going down. I asked again, "Why was he with you?" She dodged it with a little click of her tongue. "He said you don't want him around your real family." My eyes flicked to the suitcase like it betrayed me. I whispered, "He said that," and my chest went hollow. "Don't you dare pretend you're shocked," she fired back. "I'm not pretending," I said, and it came out shaky. I hated that too, I hate sounding weak around her. She heard it and pushed harder like always. "You're cruel," she said, "you've always been." That was her favorite weapon, old labels, easy and sticky. I felt myself shrinking inside, which made me mad at myself. I said, "This is not about my childhood," and she pounced. "Oh, it's exactly about who you are," she snapped. Then she dropped the word that made my skin crawl. "You're a monster," she said, slow and clean. I stood frozen, phone hot against my ear. I let out this nervous laugh and it sounded wrong. You know that laugh that isn't funny at all. It's just your body trying to stay upright. Mine did that and I wanted to throw the phone. I asked her to stop calling me names. I tried to sound adult, I tried to sound calm. Inside I was panicking because she meant it. Then she went quiet like she had switched tactics. "Tell me the real reason," she said, softer now. That softness was not kindness, it was a trap. I stared at my suitcase again, and my mind flashed forward. I saw Ethan crying, I saw Mark furious, I saw my mom smug. "There isn't a secret reason," I said, and I rushed it. "I just want time with my parents and my sister." I heard myself making it small, making it polite. Her silence grew heavier, and I knew I lost control. She exhaled through her nose like she was disgusted. "You're excluding a child to feel special," she said. I closed my eyes for 1 second, just one. When I opened them, my hand was still clenched on the handle. I tried a new angle because I was desperate. "I didn't invite anyone else's kids," I said. She jumped on it instantly, "So he's not yours." That line made my ears ring because it was too close. My voice came out flat, "He has a mom." I hated myself for that sentence as soon as it left. It sounded like I was discarding him, even if I was. My mom latched onto it like she was starving. "There it is," she said, and I pictured her smiling. You don't see him as your responsibility. I opened my mouth, then shut it again. Because if I argued, I'd have to say more than I could. My mom started talking like she was giving orders. You will bring Ethan and you will apologize. I pulled the phone away and stared at it stunned. The nerve of it made me dizzy. I put the phone back to my ear and my voice sharpened. No, I said one word, clean. My mom made a sound like I slapped her. Then her tone turned bright, which scared me more. Okay, she said, so you want a war. I felt my stomach drop because she never says that lightly. My mind searched for what she could even do. Then she added one sentence and my blood went cold. He already knows what day you leave, she said. I blinked hard like that would fix it. I hadn't told Ethan the schedule, not once. I whispered, how does he know that? And she didn't answer. Instead, I heard movement on her end, like she was walking. A door creaked, another voice flickered, faint and quick. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like a kid. My grip slipped on the phone, and my heart started hammering. I snapped, is he with you right now? My mom laughed again, and it was smug this time. Don't be dramatic, she said, and my vision tunneled. Because in that moment, I knew something was already in motion. I looked at my suitcase, half-packed and suddenly useless. I lowered my voice without meaning to. Mom, what did you do? There was a pause, like she was choosing the cruelest option. Then she said, fix this or I will, and the line went dead. I grabbed my keys and slammed the door so hard my wrists stung. I did not text first, I did not warn her. I drove like I was late to stop a fire. All I could hear was her last line and that silence after. Her porch camera followed me as I climbed the steps. I knocked once, then again, then I hit the doorbell. My hand was still raised when the lock clicked. The door swung open fast, like she was already waiting. She blocked the frame with her body and a tight smile. Behind her, I caught a quick movement in the hallway. A small sneaker flashed, then vanished, and my stomach flipped. I pointed past her, who's here? She did this slow blink like I was being rude. Nobody you need to worry about, she murmured, calm as ever. I stepped forward anyway because I was done playing polite. Her hand shot out and pressed my shoulder back. Don't barge into my house, she warned, voice low. I stared at her hand on me and my face went hot. I pried her fingers off one by one. Move, I said, and my voice shook, which made me angrier. She shifted aside like she was granting a favor. I walked in and stopped dead near the entry. Ethan sat on the couch with a juice box in both hands. He stared at me like he was watching a show. My brain did this stupid skip, like a scratched record. He was not supposed to be here, not today, not ever, unannounced. I looked at my mom. How long has he been here? Her mouth twitched like she was enjoying my confusion. Long enough to calm down, she replied, too casual. Ethan took a slow sip and kept eye contact. That tiny act felt like a dare, and I hated myself for noticing. Why is he calming down here? I asked, and my voice tightened. My mom waved toward the kitchen without moving her feet. He needed a safe place, she said, like I was dangerous. I glanced at Ethan again, and he looked perfectly fine. The mismatch made my skin prickle, like I was missing a piece. Ethan, I started, and my mom cut in fast. Don't interrogate him. Her nails tapped the counter once. I swallowed the words I wanted because she set the rules here. Ethan's mouth curled barely, and he watched me swallow it. I tried a softer approach, and it tasted fake. Hey buddy, what's going on? I kept my hands visible. He shrugged and stared at the floor like he practiced it. Then he looked up and asked, are you leaving without me? That question landed like a shove. Not are you going, not where, just without me. I glanced at my mom, and she raised her eyebrows. Like this was the point of the whole meeting. You told him, I snapped, then bit my tongue too late. My mom didn't deny it, she didn't even flinch. Instead, she turned toward Ethan and smiled wide. Sweetie, do you want another snack? She asked, too bright. Ethan nodded, then kept watching me over his straw. My mom walked past me and brushed my arm on purpose. It was light contact, but it felt like a claim. You see how easy this could be, her tone implied, and it made my jaw clench. I followed her into the kitchen because she forced the flow. She opened a cabinet and took her time. Stop stalling, I said, and I surprised myself with the bite. Her shoulders lifted in a slow shrug like she had endless patience. You came here to yell, she said, still not turning around. I came here to ask why you pulled him into this, I fired back. She placed a plate down with a soft tap, like punctuation. He's already in it, she answered, and my stomach sank. I pushed because backing down never works with her. Who gave him the dates? I kept my voice low. She turned then, eyes sharp like a blade without shine. Why are you acting like dates are classified? She shot back. Because it wasn't about dates, it was about control. I didn't say that though, saying it would make it real. I rubbed my palm on my jeans, trying to reset my nerves. Then she leaned closer, and her voice dropped into that mother register. He cried, she whispered like she was sharing a secret. I blinked hard. I pictured Ethan at home, bored and blunt. Crying did not fit him, and that mismatch scared me. I asked, when did you see him cry, and she smiled wider. Last weekend, she said, and she finally said it clean. No dodge, no vague phrasing, just a fact placed on the table. My mouth opened, then closed because my brain raced ahead. How did you even get him last weekend? Came out, and her eyes glittered. She tilted her head like I was slow. Mark dropped him off, she replied, and it hit me hard. I felt stupid in the worst way, like everyone had meetings without me. Ethan's laugh drifted in from the living room, and it sounded pleased. I walked back in, and Ethan sat straighter when he saw me. He held his juice like it was a prop. You like it here? I asked, and my voice stayed careful. He shrugged again, then added, Grandma lets me choose stuff. My mom appeared behind me, close enough to hear everything. That's what family does, she said, loud on the word family. She said it like an announcement meant for someone else. I glanced toward the front window and saw a neighbor outside. The neighbor wasn't even pretending to ignore us. They stood by the sidewalk and watched like it was free TV. My mom noticed too, and her smile grew. That's when I understood she wanted witnesses. I turned back to her and kept my voice flat. Why are you making this public? I asked, and my hands shook. She spread her arms like she was innocent. Public, she repeated, and her tone dared me to say more. Ethan looked between us, eyes alert, soaking it up. I hated how aware he seemed in that moment. I crouched to his level and tried again, steady and plain. Did you ask Grandma about the trip? I asked, and he didn't blink. He nodded once, then he added something that made my chest tighten. She said you'd change your mind when you felt bad. My eyes snapped to my mom, her mouth stayed relaxed. She didn't correct him because he repeated her plan perfectly. I stood up fast and my knees almost locked. Don't teach him guilt like it's a tool, I said, voice cracking. My mom's smile dropped and her eyes hardened. Don't tell me how to raise my grandson, she said, and Ethan watched my face. That word again, grandson. It wasn't a slip, it was a flag planted in my living situation. I leaned forward and lowered my voice because I was shaking. He is not your project, I said, and she leaned in too. He is your responsibility, she snapped, quiet but fierce. Then she softened in one breath like a switch flipped. You're making him feel unwanted, she whispered, and it felt rehearsed. Ethan's shoulders slumped on cue and my stomach turned. I backed up a step because the scene felt staged. My brain screamed to leave, but my feet stayed stuck. I glanced at Ethan and he kept his eyes down, too perfect. You know that feeling when something is off and you cannot prove it. I reached for my keys like they were a lifeline. My mom stepped between me and the door, smooth and quick. You're not walking out until you fix this, she said, voice sweet again. Ethan looked up at me then, and his expression wasn't sad at all. It was curious, like he was waiting for my next move. I swallowed because I finally saw the trap shape. If I exploded, I'd become her story. If I folded, I'd teach him it works. And my mom stood there smiling, like she already knew which one I'd pick. I stepped outside and sucked in air like I forgot how. My hands fumbled the keys, and I hated that too. I walked fast to my car and refused to look back. I knew she was watching from the window, and that mattered. I started the engine and sat there a second. My head buzzed with a dozen replies I never used. I kept replaying Ethan's calm little lines, word for word. Who coaches a kid to say stuff like that? I drove home and gripped the wheel too tight. At every red light, I checked my mirrors like I was followed. That sounds dramatic, I know, but my nerves were fried. I kept hearing my mom's voice in my head, soft and sure. When I got inside, I didn't take my shoes off. I went straight to the kitchen and set my keys down hard. Then I stood still and listened for footsteps upstairs. Nothing moved, which made it worse. Ethan's backpack sat by the entry bench. It hadn't been there that morning, and I knew it. My brain tried to explain it away like it was safer. Then I heard a small thump upstairs and I froze. I called up Ethan, "You home?" and kept my voice light. A pause followed, then his footsteps came slow. He appeared at the top of the stairs and stared down. He looked like he expected an apology from me. "Where's Mark?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. Ethan shrugged and leaned on the railing like a groan. "Man, Dad's in the shower," he said, then watched my face. That little watchful look put me on edge again. I nodded like everything was normal and walked past the backpack. I did not touch it yet, I did not even glance at it. I went to the sink and ran water I didn't need. I was buying time and Ethan knew it. He came down and parked himself near the hallway. Not close, not far, just planted where he could see me. "Are you mad at Grandma?" he asked, voice casual. The question felt loaded, like bait with a hook. I kept my eyes on the faucet and answered carefully. "I'm dealing with adults right now," I said. He tilted his head and smiled without warmth. "Grandma says you don't like grown-up talks," he replied. That hit a nerve and I almost snapped. Instead, I turned off the water and wiped my hands. I forced a calm face that probably looked fake. I asked, "What else does Grandma say?" and he blinked slow. He walked to his backpack and nudged it with his foot. "She says you like to keep secrets," he said, still mild. Then he looked right at me and added, "But I'm smart." My throat tightened because that was not just a kid brag. I waited until he drifted toward the living room. I moved fast the second he stopped watching. I lifted the backpack and carried it to the kitchen table. My hands shook as I unzipped it, like I was committing a crime. I told myself I was being careful, not sneaky. I told myself I was protecting everyone, not snooping. It still felt gross and I'm not proud of it. Then I saw the folded paper and my pulse jumped. It was a printed itinerary with my exact dates on it. Not a rough guess, not sometime next week, exact. The page had crease marks like it had been opened a lot. I stared at it and felt my skin go cold because I never printed it. I flipped it over and saw a pen mark near the flight time. A little circle, like someone highlighted the part that mattered. Under that was a note in blocky kid handwriting. It read, "Ask about seats," and my mouth went dry. I checked the backpack again and found another folded sheet. This one had a list of questions written in the same hand. Which airport can I bring my tablet? Where will I sleep? My fingers went numb because this was planning, not wishing. I heard the shower stop upstairs and shoved everything back fast. The zipper snagged and my heart jumped into my throat. I yanked it down and forced it closed with shaking hands. Then Ethan walked in behind me, quiet as a shadow. He stared at the backpack on the table and didn't speak. I tried to act normal, but my face felt stiff. He slid into a chair and rested his chin on his hands. "You were checking my stuff," he said like it was obvious. I held his gaze and chose my words like glass. "I was looking for your homework," I lied badly. He nodded like he accepted it, then smirked a little. "Sure," he said, and my stomach dropped again. Mark came downstairs, hair damp, looking confused. He stopped when he saw Ethan sitting there so calmly. Then he looked at me and saw my face. "What happened now?" His voice had that tired edge, like this was routine. I slid the backpack off the table like it burned. I held up the itinerary and waited for his reaction. His eyes flicked to it, then away, then back. That tiny hesitation told me more than any confession. "You printed this?" I asked, voice low and tight. Mark reached for it, then stopped himself mid-motion. Ethan watched both of us like he was at a game. Mark swallowed hard, and that swallow was my answer. Before Mark could speak, Ethan leaned forward. "So what airport are we using?" he asked, bright and confident. Mark's face went blank for half a second. And I realized Ethan wasn't asking, he was claiming. I stared at my husband and waited for him to correct it. He didn't, he just blinked and rubbed his forehead. I felt something sharp settle inside my chest. Because in that moment I understood this was bigger than my mom, and I was late. I slapped the itinerary onto the counter and held my ground. Mark's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to me. Ethan stayed in his chair like he owned it. I didn't like the way he looked, patient and expectant. Upstairs, I told Ethan and pointed without smiling. He didn't move right away, which made my jaw tight. Mark finally stepped in and raised his hand. Ethan pushed back slowly, like he was choosing compliance. He climbed the stairs at a lazy pace. Halfway up, he paused and looked over the railing. "Don't fight," he called down, almost cheerful. Then he disappeared into his room, and I hated how timed it felt. I turned on Mark so fast he flinched. "Explain this," I said, tapping the paper with 2 fingers. Mark opened his mouth, then shut it again. That hesitation was loud, louder than yelling. "I didn't mean for him to see it," Mark started. I cut him off with a sharp hand. "Stop, how did he get it?" Mark rubbed his face slow and stressed. He looked like a guy caught cheating, not like a parent solving a problem. He reached for the paper, then froze when I didn't budge. "I printed it at work," he admitted, voice low. "Why?" The word came out flat, almost calm. Mark swallowed and glanced up toward Ethan's door. "Because you keep shutting down," he said, testing the line. I laughed once, ugly and short. "You printed travel details because I shut down." He winced like he heard how insane it sounded. He tried again, softer. I wanted him to feel included. I leaned in. "Included in what? My plans or your plan?" Mark's shoulders tightened, then slumped. He stared at the counter like answers were hidden in it. I lowered my voice because I felt myself tipping. "Did you give this to my mom?" I didn't phrase it as a question. Mark's silence dragged out, heavy and sticky. That pause told me enough, and it made my ears ring. "I asked her for help," he said, quick like ripping a bandage. My hands went cold, then hot, then cold again. "Help doing what?" I kept my eyes on him. Mark exhaled like he was about to defend something gross. He held both palms out like I was a wild animal. "Talking you down," he said, "getting you to soften up." I stared at him because I couldn't process it fast enough. "So you recruited my mom to manage me," I said, and my voice cracked. Mark stepped closer and lowered his tone. "It wasn't like that," he insisted, and his face went tight. "It was exactly like that," I shot back. He flinched again, and it made me feel mean and trapped. He tried to grab my hand, and I pulled away. "I'm trying to make this family work," he said, desperate. I shook my head slow. "You can't force love with pressure." Mark's eyes flashed like that word hit a nerve. "You don't try," he snapped, then caught himself. His mouth clamped shut, his chest rose fast. There it was, the real accusation he'd been feeding. I stared at him and waited for the rest. Mark's voice dropped into something rehearsed. "He notices when you leave the room," he muttered. "He notices when you don't ask about his day." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you track my tone like a referee?" Mark looked away, and that avoidance was an answer. I stepped toward the stairs and raised my voice. "Ethan, stay upstairs," I called, steady and sharp. A floorboard creaked above, then stillness. He was listening, and Mark knew it. Mark moved between me and the stairs. "Don't drag him into this," he warned, tense. I pointed at the paper again. "You already did." Mark's jaw worked like he was chewing anger. I grabbed my phone and unlocked it with shaking fingers. "Did you tell my mom the dates?" I asked again. Mark stared at the screen like it was a bomb. Then he nodded once, small and guilty. "Not at first," he added fast, like that helped. I let out a slow breath through my nose. "Keep going," I said, and my voice scared even me. Mark's shoulders sank like he knew he was cooked. He paced 2 steps and stopped, then paced again. "I told her you were being stubborn," he admitted. "I told her you were drawing lines that hurt Ethan." I clenched my teeth. "So you painted me as the villain." Mark's face tightened, and he didn't deny it. He leaned on the counter and stared at his hands. "She said she could fix it," he mumbled. I froze. "Fix it how?" Mark hesitated, and my pulse started thumping in my ears. "She wanted him to spend time with her," Mark said. "And she wanted you to see him as part of things." I took a step back because my brain finally clicked. "You've been dropping him off there," I said, and it came out certain. Mark's eyes snapped up, then slid away again. "Sometimes," he admitted, "when you were working late." I swallowed hard without telling me. He shrugged once like it was normal logistics. "You knew I wouldn't agree," I said, and my voice went thin. Mark lifted his head and looked right at me. "I knew you'd make it a fight," he shot back. That sentence burned because it was partly true. I hated that he could use my reactions against me. I hated that he learned how to phrase it. "You made it a fight," I said. "You built the arena." Mark's nostrils flared, and he looked ready to blame me again. I walked to the living room and grabbed the backpack. I dumped it onto the couch and started pulling things out. Not toys, not random junk, just the papers and the notes. Mark watched and his face kept tightening. I held up the list of questions and shook it once. "This isn't bonding," I said. "This is a campaign." Mark stepped forward. He wrote that on his own. I gave a tight smile. He wrote "ask about seats" on his own. Mark stopped and his eyes went dull. He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "My mom used to do stuff like this," he muttered. I stared at him. "So you knew better." Mark's shoulders rolled forward and he looked smaller. He tried to shift into apology mode. "Boo. Tia was clumsy. I thought it would blow over," he said. I shook my head. "You let her into our marriage." Mark bristled. "You were already shutting her out." The words hit and I felt my temper rise. I stepped closer and pointed at his chest. "I shut her out because she bulldozes," I hissed. "And you handed her the keys." Mark's eyes went sharp. "Maybe you needed someone to challenge you." I stared at him and I felt something inside me change. That was the moment I realized he liked her leverage. Not the chaos, the leverage. He liked having an ally when I said no. And that realization made my hands stop shaking for a second. I turned and walked toward the stairs again. Mark grabbed my elbow, firm but not violent. I yanked free. "Don't touch me right now." He let go fast and his face flickered with panic. "Ethan thinks you hate him," Mark blurted. I froze on the bottom step and stared up. "Does he think that?" I asked slow, "or did you tell him that?" Mark went quiet and the silence was brutal. Upstairs, a door creaked like someone shifted weight. Ethan was still listening, still collecting. I felt sick because I could not fix this in one night. I turned back to Mark and lowered my voice again, controlled and cold. "Are you trying to take him on the trip without me agreeing?" I asked. Mark's eyes widened for a split second. He opened his mouth, then closed it. And that hesitation was the second confession, without any words. He finally spoke, quiet and fast. "My mom thinks you'll cave at the airport," he admitted. I blinked hard. "At the airport?" Mark nodded once, like he regretted saying it already. My stomach turned hard and I grabbed the counter edge. "So she's planning to show up," I said, voice low. Mark's face tightened. "She said she could make it smooth." I let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Smooth for who?" I asked, and Mark couldn't answer. I stared at him and felt my heart pounding in my throat. He wasn't just letting it happen, he was hoping it worked. I looked up at Ethan's hallway, then back at my husband. And I realized the next move wasn't mine, it was already set. My phone buzzed at 5:12 a.m. and I dropped it. It skittered across the counter like it wanted to escape. Mark watched it happen and did not reach for it. That told me my mom was already on the move. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Mark stepped into my path with both hands up. "Let's talk first," his voice tried to sound careful. I pushed past him because talking was their weapon. He followed me to the driveway like a shadow. "You're not really doing this," he muttered tight. I opened my car door and looked back at him. "Watch me," I said, and my voice surprised us both. My hands shook on the steering wheel the whole drive. Not fear of crashing, fear of folding. Have you ever felt your own spine get tested like that? Every mile felt like a dare I could still lose. I pulled into the airport lot and killed the engine. For a second I just sat there, breathing through my mouth. I told myself I was allowed to be selfish sometimes. Then my phone buzzed again, and I knew it was them. I didn't answer, I didn't even check the screen. I shoved the phone deep in my bag and zipped it shut. That felt reckless, like cutting a wire in the dark. I stepped out anyway because waiting was worse. Inside, I moved fast and kept my eyes forward. I kept thinking I'd hear my mom's voice behind me. I kept thinking I'd see Ethan's backpack in my peripheral. Nothing happened, and that quiet made me tense. I reached the check-in kiosk and started tapping the screen. My fingers kept missing the buttons. A man behind me cleared his throat, impatient. I wanted to snap at him, and that scared me. I got my boarding pass and grabbed it like proof. I turned toward the bag drop and froze mid-step. My mom stood there near the entrance, smiling like a hostess. Ethan stood beside her, already wearing his backpack. My chest tightened so hard I almost coughed. Mark wasn't here, which meant this was her play now. My mom lifted a hand and waved at me slowly. Like we were meeting for brunch, not a fight. Ethan spotted me and brightened on cue. He tugged my mom's sleeve and pointed at my bag. My mom leaned down and whispered something into his ear. Then Ethan nodded like he got instructions. I walked toward them with my jaw locked. I could feel people brushing past, normal and careless. My mom stayed planted, blocking the flow of foot traffic. She wanted a scene and she picked the stage. Morning, she said, too sweet. She gestured to Ethan like she was presenting a gift. Look who's ready to go with you. Ethan gave me a wide grin and my stomach turned. I didn't greet her, I didn't touch Ethan's shoulder. I looked straight at my mom and kept my voice flat. You're not doing this here. She leaned closer like she couldn't wait. Oh, I'm doing it right, her. She replied. Her eyes flicked to the people around us. You won't scream at me in public. She was right and she knew it. Ethan stepped forward and held out his hand. Not for a hug, for my ticket. Do I sit by the window? He asked, cheerful. My mom watched my face, hunting for cracks. I crouched slightly and met Ethan's eyes. We're not flying together, I said, calm and clear. His grin wobbled for half a second. Then he glanced at my mom, like checking for permission. My mom stepped in fast and raised her voice. You are not leaving him behind. A couple nearby slowed down and stared. My face burned and my mom looked pleased. I stood up and kept my hands at my sides. Stop using him as a prop, I said low. My mom's smile slipped for a moment. Then she snapped it back on like a mask. Ethan's eyes got shiny, fast and practiced. He sniffed once and looked down at his shoes. I packed my stuff, he whispered, loud enough for strangers. People shifted closer, like they were ready to judge. I felt my throat clamp shut. Not because I believed him, because I knew how it looked. My mom angled her body, shielding Ethan like I was the threat. She didn't touch him, and that was the point. I turned slightly so I could see the bag drop line. I didn't want to stand still and get surrounded. Where is Mark? I asked, and my voice came out sharp. My mom's eyes sparkled because she had an answer ready. He's handling the boring parts, she said. Like your attitude, she added it with a light laugh. Ethan peeked up and watched me carefully. That watchful look made my skin crawl. I took a slow breath and chose my next words. This ends now, I said, and I meant it. My mom tilted her head like I was cute. Then she said the sentence she knew would slice. You want to abandon a child, she announced. It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. A woman nearby frowned at me like I kicked a puppy. My mom saw that, and her mouth lifted. I leaned in close so only she could hear me. You set him up, I whispered tight. You coached him, my voice shook despite my effort. My mom's eyes stayed calm like she was proud. Call it coaching, she murmured, call it parenting. She pulled back and raised her voice again. You're acting like a monster. The word hit hard because it was familiar. My hands curled into fists inside my sleeves. I wanted to shout that she forced this moment. Instead, I forced my voice to stay level. Move, I told her, and she did not. Ethan reached into his backpack and pulled out paper. He held it up like he was showing homework. It was my itinerary again, folded and creased. He waved it like he had a right to it. My mom pointed at the paper and smiled wider. See, he knows, she said, he's excited. Ethan nodded and took another sniff. A man behind them muttered, come on, and my mom ignored him. I took the paper from Ethan gently and folded it once. I didn't tear it, I didn't crumple it. I handed it back to him with steady hands. That paper doesn't buy you a seat, I said, and he blinked. His face shifted just for a beat. The sadness slid off like a costume falling. Then he leaned toward my mom and whispered something. My mom's jaw tightened, and that was new. She stepped closer to me, too close. You don't know what his mother is willing to do, she hissed. I froze because that name was a lever too. My mom saw my pause and pressed harder. She'll make it official, my mom whispered. She'll tell everyone you treat him badly. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I didn't answer because she wanted panic. Ethan looked up at me and spoke softly. Grandma says you'll get in trouble if you don't. He said it like a kid repeating a rule. But his eyes were sharp, like he enjoyed the edge. I straightened and looked past them at the doors. I could still walk away, I could still vanish into security. I could still choose myself for once. That thought scared me because it felt like relief. My mom grabbed my wrist suddenly, firm and possessive. You're not walking away from family, she snapped. I yanked my arm back and stepped away fast. A few heads turned and my mom looked thrilled. A security officer glanced over, assessing. My mom noticed and softened her face instantly. Oh honey, she cooed loud, don't be like this. She was building a story in real time, and I was the villain. I forced a small smile for the officer and backed up. I'm fine, I said, voice tight but polite. The officer watched my mom's hands, then mine. My mom held still like she was innocent. I turned to Ethan again and kept my voice simple. Go with your grandma, I said, right now. He didn't move, he didn't even blink. He waited because he thought I'd cave. My mom stepped between us and lifted her chin. You will apologize, she demanded loud. She wanted me to kneel in front of an audience. I felt my face go hot and then it went cold. It's something I didn't know I could do. I laughed, not nervous, not fake, just sharp. My mom flinched like I slapped her. Ethan stared like the script changed. I leaned forward and spoke so my mom could hear it clearly. You are not the boss of my marriage, I said. And you are not the boss of my trip. My mom's eyes narrowed, and I saw real anger finally. She grabbed Ethan's shoulder and squeezed. Not hard enough to look bad, hard enough to steer him. Tell her, she urged, sweet, tell her how you feel. Ethan opened his mouth and paused. That pause mattered more than his words. He wasn't overwhelmed, he was calculating. He glanced at the people again, then at me. Then he went for the line that would hurt. You don't want me, he said loud. A woman nearby gasped like it was a tragedy. My stomach dropped because now everyone had an opinion. My mom watched me, almost glowing. I took one breath and let it out slow. I want you safe, I said, clear and steady. But I won't be bullied into parenting. My mom's smile cracked and her eyes went hard. She leaned in and lowered her voice again. You'll regret this, she whispered, vicious. You'll lose your husband, her lips barely moved. That threat landed because it wasn't empty. I looked at Ethan and saw something flash across his face. Not fear, not sadness, interest. Like he wanted to see if I'd break right here. I refused to give him that. I stepped around them and started walking towards security. My mom called my name loud, sharp, commanding. I didn't turn, I didn't speed up either. My hands shook, but my feet kept moving. Behind me, my mom raised her voice to a performative wail. Look what you're doing to him. Ethan sniffed again and added a quiet sob for effect. I kept walking, and each step felt like ripping Velcro. My phone buzzed inside my bag, constant and angry. I didn't check it, I didn't want to see Mark's messages. I knew he'd be panicking now because control was slipping. I kept walking anyway because I chose my spine. At the security line, I finally looked back. My mom stood where I left her, staring like she could pull me back. Ethan stood beside her, no longer crying. He watched me like he was studying a puzzle. My mom lifted her hand and mouthed something I couldn't hear. It didn't matter, I knew the shape of it. I turned forward again and handed my ID to the agent. My voice came out steady, and that shocked me. Once I cleared security, I found a corner near my gate. My hands trembled hard now that nobody was watching. I pressed my forehead to my knuckles and breathed. I felt guilty, then furious, then calm again. I pulled out my phone and saw a flood of missed calls. My mom, Mark, unknown numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't read the texts, I didn't need the poison. I powered the phone off and the silence felt violent. When I boarded, my legs felt weak under me. I found my seat and buckled in with stiff fingers. A woman beside me smiled, polite and tired. I stared straight ahead because if I looked down I might cry. In the air, I kept replaying Ethan's face at the end. That little shift when he realized I wouldn't fold. I won't lie, it haunted me. Not because he looked hurt, because he looked curious. When we landed, I turned my phone on for 1 minute. One message from my mom sat at the top. Just a single word, like a stamp on my forehead. Fine, it read, and my stomach still dropped.